Welcome to Transform, Project 44's thought leadership forum established to bring together market experts and uncover innovative insights about the future of our supply chains. Rick, welcome to Transform. We appreciate you taking the time to be here today. To introduce to our audience, Rick is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals since 2004, I believe. And we've known each other longer than that. Rick had a tremendous career with Nabisco, Kraft, and ConAgra as a practitioner, VP of Supply Chain, and brings a tremendous wealth of knowledge to the industry and to his role with CSCMP. Again, very glad to have you here today.
Honored to be with you, John.
Yeah. So just starting off, what are some of the challenges facing your membership and supply chain leaders today?
Well, there's certainly no shortage of challenges. We have opportunities as well. But when you think about global supply chain management today, visibility is always important. Where's my inventory? Where are the people who are transporting it up and down the supply chain? That's come a long way in terms of even here at Project 44, the great work that your company does on connecting people. So we're able to use those tools to a much greater degree. We're coming out of a tough transportation year in 2018, where capacity was constricted, and now 2019, that's eased up a little bit. But in our State of Logistics report, we identify the fact that transportation expense just went over $1 trillion just in the US for the first time last year. Logistics costs as a percentage of GDP is 8%. So it's a big number we're all managing. A lot of information within those logistics components, but a lot of costs, a lot of jobs, and of course, services is the most important thing for our customers. So, global trade's an issue right now with the tariffs and things going on between our governments. We'll get through all that and we'll figure out where the inventory is going to sit. E-commerce is certainly another opportunity, and yet it's expensive. The last mile, and by the way, it's just not the last 5,280 feet. It's a whole class of trade, if you will, that folks are dealing with. And then we'll talk in a little bit about talent, which I'm very passionate about. So lots of opportunities, lots of challenges for today's supply chain leaders.
Yeah, for sure. How do you see these challenges manifesting themselves different for a shipper versus a 3PL?
Yeah, I think shippers are thinking about inventory management. Where's my inventory? If I've got a percentage of my business is say 10, 12% of retail is e-commerce, where do I position that inventory? And we're starting to see now smaller distribution centers closer to where the consumers are. So say, for example, if e-commerce was 50% of retail, what would that supply chain look like? Probably be a little bit different than what we have today. So I think companies are trying to figure that out and come up with different models to serve the constituency and tomorrow's consumer in terms of how they want products presented to them and delivered to them. Are we all going to be in our cocoons ordering everything online, expecting a delivery in an hour? What vehicles are going to ship those? And how do we deal with that last mile, if you will, that last component part of the supply chain and all of the nuances it brings? So huge opportunities, some challenges there too, but no shortage of discussion between our members and what's going on in today's modern supply chain.
Yeah, we're hearing a lot of that in the end-to-end view of visibility, first mile to last mile.
Right.
Because what happens in the first mile can impact the last mile, whether it's a direct-to-consumer or going through a retail network. So we agree with you. In fact, our speaker last month, Todd Steffen from Colliers, talked about the same thing about networks and how they're changing closer to the customer, smaller, as you just mentioned. How can the various parts of the ecosystem better collaborate to address these issues?
I was thinking about that. In my time in the food industry, I often thought about where our trucks are going to our retailers and why not manufacturers getting together and consolidate their inventories, and we'll fight it out on the shelf and utilize the logistics assets to a better degree. I think some companies are beginning to think about doing that, consolidating inventories, thinking about how do I use the transportation assets and the distribution center more effectively? And when you layer on sustainability and corporate social responsibility, how do we do a better job pushing inventory into our consumer? I remember when I was at Nabisco, if I could build an Oreo in your stomach, I would save a lot of money on packaging and transportation and so on, but we can't do that. So we got to figure out better ways to utilize the assets and the systems that we have now. And I think tomorrow's logistics and supply chain professionals are going to get really innovative and creative about doing that.
And I think maybe the visibility to data across supply chains will enable that to happen where it could.
I remember when I grew up, we didn't know sometimes where our inventory was, let alone our packaging and so on. Today, we know where it is up and down the supply chain. And that's critical for us. The technologies that companies like yours have built allowed us to redeploy non-value-added assets, even people, to more value-added jobs, because we now have technology and the tools with which to understand where our inventory is, and we can share that with our partners up and down the supply chain so that we eliminate some of this variability, eliminate forecasted inventory with actual demand to become that much better at predicting and positioning inventory up and down the supply chain. So those tools are critically important.
That probably leads to the next question is how have you seen changes from your days in supply chain visibility requirements to what you're seeing today?
It took forever to transfer information from one key supply chain participant to another. Today, machines talk to machines. And when you think about the data that we have at our fingertips, I always often talk about, well, how do we use that data to make a better decision? Data in and of itself doesn't allow you to make a better decision. It's how do you extract what's important out of it and make a decision that you would otherwise not be able to make to do better for your customer or for your internal supply chain. So the access to visibility, the timeliness and accuracy of it is incredibly more important, more prominent than it was back in the day when I grew up in supply chain. So it's great to see.
Yeah, and that's where this whole term we talked about before, digitalization,
Right.
And how that's impacting the business. And you're seeing it with your members.
Absolutely. I mean, they're all looking at this information and thinking about how do I apply it to the modern day supply chain. We can talk about autonomous vehicles and drones and all the things that are happening in transportation to shore up that system. But when you have this much data, it takes a lot of people to figure out how best to utilize it and create a reality in supply chain that we really can take advantage of and serve our customers better and do it at the lowest total delivered cost.
With all these changes, how do you see the workforce evolving and maybe what CSCP can do to help?
Yeah, it's I often ask when I make presentations, how many of you have children? Hands raised. And how many of you have kids asking, how do I grow up to be a truck driver? And not a lot of hands go up. And yet that's a job that's not going away, and we have to make it more professional, and we all understand that. But now supply chain majors are getting job offers 8, 10, 12 months before they graduate because it's such a prominent role that they can play, and it's so dynamic in terms of careers that you can have. And yet we still have an awareness issue. Part of my pet peeve is how do we get it into lower levels of our educational system? It's not taught in high school. You stumble across it in a university setting, and lo and behold, you've got a logistics or supply chain career. Yet it's so important to modern global business today, and we've got to really elevate the awareness and the importance of supply chain and the careers that one can have in it.
Yeah, for sure. I agree 100%. You've got a big conference coming up, EDGE in Anaheim, September 15th to the 18th. I know we have a few speaking sessions there. We're very, very excited about being there. But how do you feel that the conference will address a lot of these issues?
It's a conference by the members for the members. It's 3,000 folks from 40, 45 different countries talking about what's going on in supply chain and changing and talking about best practices that they have found have helped them change their approach to the supply chain. So we're going to address all these topics and many, many more. And we'll obviously talk about blockchain. Everybody wants to know about blockchain, and we'll have some experts talking about that. But then how do we just manage the supply chain, the physical supply chain that we have today? What about regulation? We have a session, as a matter of fact, on the IMO, International Maritime Organization, sulfur cap for 2020. That's a big issue for people that ship products across oceans. And so we'll have a lot of discussion around talent, a lot of discussion on sales and operations planning, all of the pillars of today's modern day supply chain. And it's delivered by people who really care about it. I mean, our organization exists to educate those folks and connect people across the supply chain. And we care deeply about advancing the disciplines of logistics and supply chain and the careers of the individuals in it. And so that's what we're going to hear about in a few short weeks in Anaheim.
Well, sounds exciting. We're looking forward to being there. Kind of a last comment, what are some of the things you'd share with some of the practitioners out there that they should be looking at in the next 5 years?
Well, think about talent. I mean, I do think it all comes down to people. No matter how much technology we have and employ in our supply chain, it's going to be the people who are able to be creative and come up with solutions that we would otherwise not be able to come up with. So focus on people. Focus on what makes someone really think about their career as a journey. Because careers are not sprints. It's not, it is a marathon, it's a journey. And there's no replacement for experience. So if you're a younger person coming into our discipline, go find out what goes on in a distribution center. Find out what goes on in a manufacturing organization. Find out what customer service really deals with. Go spend some time in your customer and see what their issues are. And you'll be a well-rounded individual and have your leadership and managerial and technical skills come along with you. And so you can lead our discipline into the future.
That's some great advice, and we thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.